the world on YouTube for free as part of that YouTube offering and building a really authentic YouTube experience around that game. Also be available here on YouTube TV and also available over the air in both markets in LA and Kansas City. We're also excited to continue to innovate with ESPN. One of the things our new deal included was a number of Mondays where we have two games at one time. We think that's a great way for football fans to get more football and access to it. This you'll see us take a step back to the future with a couple of those Monday nights, go back to what we did to start the year for a number of times on Monday night where we have a game at 7 and 10. 6 hours of football for those NFL fans we're excited about as something to bring a touch of the past to today. We're excited about, continuing to have a great presence in December and, a Fox doubleheader on week 16 on that Saturday. That's been a day we've played out for 37 of the last 40 years. We think it's a big NFL day. We're excited to continue that with Fox with a couple great matchups there. We're also going to continue to build Christmas. And you've seen, with Netflix and how we reach our fans around the world there with a couple games earlier in the day and then finish it up with a great one in Kansas City on Amazon. And so hopefully, that may be the biggest streaming day in history with 3 NFL games and marquee matchups throughout a day on Christmas. And then continuing that into that weekend with Peacock and a great partnership with NBC. You have Sunday Night Football every week on Peacock, but in prime time in week 17 on that Saturday, a Peacock matchup that we're incredibly excited about. And so those are a lot of the new elements. What's not new is our commitment and focus on broad reach for our games. 85% or so of our games are still predominantly distributed by broadcast television. And we've added choice to that. Now you can get games on Peacock. Almost, every one of our broadcasters now with Fox launching a D2C service this fall will have additional options for those fans. So if they want to watch on digital, or if they can watch on they can, or if they want to watch through traditional broadcast and television, they can. We love that choice and that wide availability of our game. And as we think about going onto new platforms, going onto platforms that are already widely scaled, that have big NFL audiences on them already, like a Netflix, like an Amazon, like now a YouTube, we're excited about. There's already wide reach of those platforms. And we think the NFL going onto those platforms could be a real win-win. As we look to this year, maybe a couple other points. One is we're really excited to continue to innovate and evolve. And we'll start the season, really excited. We've seen what kickoff can do with 28, 29 million fans watching on that opening night. We know there's a lot of pent-up excitement. We'll start with a great matchup with Dallas and Philadelphia to kick off the season. And you'll see us extend some of those big matchups onto days like Thanksgiving and Black Friday, where we're really excited about the Thanksgiving weekend overall. Football, food, family, all coming together with some of our big matchups. But within all that, we still have the flexibility for flex. And you saw what happened last year with the Commanders. As much as we try to look through the year and figure out where we think every game and team should go, we all know there's going to be surprises. You had the Commanders last year, you had the Lions a couple of years ago, you had the Bengals a few years before that. And so as much as we think we have a great schedule now, we still know there's flexibility as things change and evolve through the exciting season to get there, that we have that flexibility. So, we're really excited about the schedule this year. We can talk. Mike and Ani and the team do an incredible job, really relentlessly and tirelessly for 4 months plus of putting their blood, sweat, and tears into the schedule. And we're super excited about it. We're super excited about how we can leverage technology to drive that. But at the heart, it's still a human-led process, and the human touch, the human input is ultimately, I think, how we shape and refine and ultimately select our final schedule. And I just spend one more minute at the beginning to take a second and just say thank you to Howard Katz. Many of you know Howard. Howard is a legend, not only in the NFL, but in the entire U.S. sports industry for the last 50 plus years. What Mike, Ani, and I will carry the torch with is really.
Hey, this is Vinny Abraham, Oakland's first vlogger.
Such a good position.
I got a
Howard's done over the last 20
trying to take Oakland away
with the NFL schedule,
saying we're not a big
level of sophistication and expertise to a whole new level. So This was Howard's last year, formally involved with our process, and we're better for it. And just a big thank you to Howard for all that he's done for the NFL and for the schedule in particular. So with that, I'll pause here and open it up to Brian for questions. But thanks again, everybody, for making the time today.
Thanks, Jeff and Hans. Let's get to questions using the raise hand function at the bottom of your screen. Once called upon, please unmute yourself and ask your question relatively quickly, as we do have a number of people who've already raised their hands. Let us know to whom you're directing your question. Let's begin now with Joe Reedy, AP.
Thanks, Brian. Hans, quick question on the ABC ESPN simulcast. Last year, when the schedule was released, there were 5 listed, and you added some during the year. This year on the announcement, there's 11. Is it just a point in a relationship that the simulcasts work and there's just no turning back from it? And then for Jeff, too, Roger was in Columbus on Tuesday about the Browns stadium. Anything with Browns and Bengals coming up, league meeting next week as far as updates on that?
Sure, Joe. I'll start and then throw it over to Jeff for the second part of your question. Look, as I said a second ago, Joe, we're always focused about reach and how we engage as wide a part of our fan base as we can. Obviously, the media landscape's changed a ton, and ESPN has seen a bunch of change throughout their portfolio of assets. And what we're excited about is they've created this opportunity. They have a lot to work through. They have to work through their distribution agreements. They have to work through their impending launch of their new ESPN digital product. And so I think as they balance all those things, they know we're very focused on the reach. And I think they have to work through the right to the right answer about how they balance all the considerations on their end. And we're really excited that they came back with a proposal and want to continue to add those simulcasts. We think it's a great way to drive a bigger audience and engage more of our fans. And so we're really happy with where we netted out this year with having, another 10 or so simulcasts as part of the Monday Night Football schedule. Jeff?
Yeah, thanks, Hans. Joe, the question about anything related to stadiums in Cleveland or Cincinnati, don't anticipate any conversation around that at the league meeting in May. Commissioner and the Browns had good meetings in the Capitol in Columbus, looking for solutions to the stadium situation, but I don't anticipate a conversation next week in Minnesota.
Next up, let's go to Mark Mask, Washington Post.
For Jeff, 2 separate issues related to the meeting next week. First, on the Olympic flag football resolution, sort of what's your level of optimism that the owners will support that resolution, and what's the state of discussions with the NFLPA and the other governing bodies related to the terms? And then the second issue is tush push. Has that proposal officially been modified yet to prohibit all pushing and pulling anywhere on the field, and sort of is a vote certain, and what's the level of where do you gauge the support for that proposal at this point?
Thanks, Mark. Let's see. Starting with flag, I guess in the reverse order of the flag questions. Certainly, we've been in touch with the Players Association. The resolution, as you've probably seen by now, resolves to permit our management council to negotiate appropriate arrangements with the NFL Players Association to govern what participation would look like. So that is exactly as it says. There's more work to be done there. It will be certainly an important topic of conversation, and the resolution would permit our management council to find a solution or an approach, I guess, maybe better said, an approach to our players participating. I would expect it to be an engaging and robust conversation on that topic. On the playing group proposals that were left over from March, as you know, we tabled the push play conversation. There had been some discussion then and has been since with the competition committee, both around the push play as well as around aiding the runner, pushing and pulling him anywhere on the field. As I understand it, that rule prohibiting pushing or pulling players existed in the NFL rulebook dating back to the origins of the game in 1920 for the NFL, or even before, until about 2005 when it was taken out. So that too, I anticipate, is going to be an interesting conversation among the clubs. I can't sit here and tell you that I have a prediction on how it's going to come out, but there was a lot that was discussed when we were together in March around whether that is a football play, whether it is appropriate if one or two teams do effectuate a play extremely well to take that away from them, and then to look back at the history of the game over the last number of decades to see why that play, aiding the runner, assisting the runner, pushing or pulling, was taken out from an officiating perspective. So all of those elements were discussed in March, and that conversation has continued, and we'll see if there is a three-quarter consensus on any proposal, specifically the push play proposal that Green Bay put forward, or any other amending it when we get together next week.
Let's go back to back with two Mikes, Mike Reese and then Mike Florio.
Two bikes.
Thank you, Brian. This might be for Mike or Ani. It's a team-specific question to the Patriots. So they get the latest bye week for the second year in a row. And I was wondering just how much consideration, if any, is given to just varying a team's bye week on an annual basis. And then as you look at the Patriots schedule, and I know you got 32 different of these ones, what stands out to you as you were putting it together that might be interesting that we might miss just sort of looking at it on the surface?
Hey, Mike, it's Mike North. I can certainly take the buy question. Your suggestion that do we look at it on an annual basis? I would say not necessarily. Just because you got the earliest possible buy one year doesn't mean you might not get the earliest possible buy the next. Same with the latest possible buy. It's less about on a 1 year look, and it's more about a trend. If we've done something 2, 3, 5, 7 years in a row, an early buy, opening on the road, closing on the road, a short week Thursday on the road. As those trends develop, it's more of a focus for us to ensure that it doesn't proliferate too much longer. 1 year, 2 years in a row, not necessarily a trend. And I'll also remind, don't forget you get with your Thursday game, the mini bye. They got the weekend off. They'll get a little travel. So the Patriots do have the mini bye in there in week 11. So it's not like it's 14 straight weeks without a break. They do have the mini bye. So we're always conscious about separating the Thursday game from the bye week. If you've got multiple Thursday games, separating them from each other and separating them from the bye. So not a focus for this year that we had to avoid a week 14 bye from the Patriots. I'd be surprised if they caught a week 14 bye next year. As far as how their schedule goes, I think, that's still one of our top brands. They obviously have a quarterback in place that, they're certainly hoping is going to be there for a decade. And obviously a storyline with the new coach coming in. Look for a minute at, does the Patriots at Titans game, Coach Vrabel returns, have to find itself into a national window, considered it, didn't lock it in, and on the final version, the way it spun out, it didn't happen to end up in one. But still 3 national television games for the Patriots, a Sunday night, a Monday night, a Thursday night, a staple of the primetime schedule for decades in this league, and still really one of the top brands in the league. So still find themselves in some national television windows, and as always, a chance to play their way into more as a result of flexible scheduling.
Let's go to Mike Florio, NBC Sports.
Thanks, guys. Hey, this is from Mike. There was a time when every team was required to have at least one primetime game. I'm not sure when that changed. But first, why did it change? And second, is there a point where the distribution of primetime games, with some teams getting a lot, some teams getting none, becomes a potential competitive balance issue?
I'll take the second question first. Certainly the better teams probably end up finding themselves more widely represented in the television windows and therefore, get out of the routine. The Chiefs, for instance, have been playing 5, 6, 7 primetime games playing seemingly every day of the week, it doesn't seem to have hurt them. So, yeah, that's what comes with success. Sunday 1 o'clock games become less prevalent. That being said, there's more Chiefs Sunday 1 o'clock games this year than last year. There's more Cowboys 1 o'clock Sunday afternoon games than last year. So, constant balancing act, trying to figure out, feed the fans, feed our broadcast partners with the games and the teams they want to see. But yeah, always with an eye towards competitive inequities. But it doesn't seem to have hurt the Chiefs. We'll see how the Eagles react this year with all their extra primetime television. When did we move away from every team being represented on national television was probably, I think, as a result of the most recent round of television deals, not these new ones that we're in, but the ones before. We are always conscious of, should a team have an opportunity to play its way into the national television schedule? The answer to that is yes. That's what flexible scheduling is for. That's what the Saturday TBD pool is for. To say a team didn't have any national television games, but they had a early European game at 9:30 in the morning, that's not the same, obviously, as a primetime game. So not a commitment necessarily that everybody has to have one, but everybody's got an opportunity always to not just play themselves into bigger windows in prime time, but as you well know, play themselves into bigger windows on Sunday afternoons. We work very closely with CBS and Fox every Sunday on their maps and the distribution of the games. And if the Titans or the Saints are playing well and have good storylines and have games with playoff implications down the stretch, maybe if they don't even find their way to Sunday night or Monday night, they can still find themselves in a bigger window on a Sunday afternoon. 50, 60, 70% of the country still getting a chance to watch a Titans game or a Saints game.
Uh-oh. This system is a little jinky. I don't know what's going on. I'm still seeing Mike.
Okay, we'll come back to Gustavo. Let's go. John Lewis, Sports Media Watch.
All right. Hey, thanks so much for taking the time to do this today. I just had a question for Hans about the holiday strategy. Generally, you know, the Cowboys game on Thanksgiving is going to get your largest audience of the year, really regardless of who's in it. So what went into the decision this year to put Kansas City in there rather than, say, a divisional rival or maybe an up-and-coming team?
Thanks, John. You know, I actually, it's interesting. You look at the day last year, the early game almost beat the late game on Thanksgiving. I think we had over 40 million viewers from 2:30 on that day. And one of the things you'll see on Thanksgiving, and just looking at the numbers, is we're moving the kick time back from 12:30 to 1 o'clock. We probably gained 10 million viewers in that half hour. So we just know our fans are out and about. They're out and about in Detroit, quite frankly, where they're at a parade and working with the Lions. That just seemed like one of the smaller innovations and evolutions to get to a better kick time that day, to let more fans be there for the beginning of the game. But you sort of said it. We've seen how big those numbers can be. Over 40 million with most of the early game, our highest two ever viewed regular season games at 4:30, you know, well over 25 million for the late game on NBC. Our fans have sort of spoke. That's a unique day with a lot of NFL fans at home with family watching football. And so when we looked at the year this year and saw the depth and the number of great matchups we had, certainly as we sit here in May, we thought that was a great opportunity to put some of our best onto Thanksgiving and really serve the fans. And they're telling us they want to watch. That's a great day where a lot of them are available to watch. We try to be responsive to that. And I think we've seen that throughout the day with Green Bay, Detroit, you know, Kansas City, Dallas, and then ending in Cincy, Baltimore, which is a great way to end it and run into Black Friday, by the way, with what we think is a great matchup with Chicago and Philadelphia, a real football game sounding day and game, as Howard would say, as a way to continue to build Black Friday as well.
Okay, let's go back to Brazil. Gustavo?
Hi guys, sorry for the inconvenience back then. I wanted to ask Hans, what made the NFL want to select the Brazil game, the São Paulo game this year for the YouTube worldwide, and if there is an expectation for next year of other places of two games in Brazil, or just maybe one per year is enough?
Sure. Look, we were super excited with what we saw last year on Netflix and the first ever, probably of any major rights, maybe around the world, of taking a game and truly making it global in distribution and getting over 30 million people watching on Christmas Day for both of those Netflix games. We learned a lot, and we learned primarily there's a lot of NFL fans everywhere. And so when we went into this year, I think it was really a combination. It's not just that we selected it. We actually went out fairly flexible with our process. We looked at some different game windows and also let the market speak. And YouTube came back to us, and they were particularly excited about being in Brazil. They were particularly excited about the opportunity with that game and to bring that game that was already international based on location and bring that to the entire world. They thought was a great way to leverage and use their platform. So we were certainly excited to continue to make that a big Friday night as part of week one. But YouTube was really excited about the aspect and the dynamics of it being in Brazil and that game in particular and what they could do with their platform. Look, as we look to the future, and I think our international team, I think we've been very public. We see tremendous growth around and across our international business and really in bringing the game globally. It's amazing, we're part of the Olympics in 2028 and you see flag growth everywhere, but we also have to be selective. And I think we're going to look, we certainly had a great 2 years in Brazil, but Peter O'Reilly and the international team are sort of into their process already. And I think, there's a lot of interest from a lot of different countries around the world. I think we're still working through where exactly we'll be in 2026. But we're excited about, the future opportunities, and especially in Brazil.
Go to Pittsburgh with Brooke Pryor, ESPN.
I think this question's for Mike North, but the Steelers obviously have an unresolved quarterback situation at the moment. So I'm wondering, how does that affect Aaron Rodgers' decision or lack thereof right now, affect making this schedule? What are some of the challenges in determining where to slot the Steelers? Not only are they opening week one at the Jets, but they've also got 4 primetime games.
Yeah, look, I think the assumption right now is you play the hand you're dealt, and Aaron Rodgers is not the quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers, but their sustained success for over a decade here. Coach Tomlin's never had a losing season. The Steelers are always playoff relevant in late down the stretch, and they have a national fan base. So their body of work is what warranted the national television exposure for them, same as probably in previous years. Obviously, if a future Hall of Fame quarterback decides to play for the Steelers, that probably only makes their schedule more interesting. Obviously, Pittsburgh Jets in week one. Look, I think if we knew for certain that Aaron was going to be the quarterback of the Steelers, we might have done something a little different in week one with the Steelers game. And maybe the one hedge, maybe Packers Steelers, if you put that game in a window where it does become something even bigger, we wouldn't want to unbalance, maybe one of the partners. So if it fell on a Sunday afternoon, for instance, it becomes the dominant story of the day, Aaron's first game against his old team. So put it in a national window. If Aaron's the quarterback, it's a great story. If Aaron's not the quarterback, it's still Packers Steelers Sunday Night Football in week 8. Like Hans said, Howard would say it sounds like a football game. So tried to play it down the middle. We don't know anything more than anybody else. The schedule was built, for Coach Tomlin and for the Steelers. And if Aaron decides to play, it probably just makes many, if not all, the Steelers games a little more interesting.
Go to Jacob Feldman, Sportico.
Fantastic. Thank you guys for doing the super interesting stuff as always. I want to ask a little bit about flexible scheduling. Obviously, there's been some slight tweaking to what you guys are able to do. I'm curious, first off, if you're anticipating additional flexing this year, given the comfort with and some of the new freedom that you have, and just in general, how the growth of flexing has impacted the scheduling process and the way you're going about it.
Hey, Ani, why don't you jump in and take this one?
Sure thing. So, yeah, look, I think that flexible scheduling has been something that we've had in place since 2006. For many of those years, it was from Sunday Night Football and the opportunity to, an important distinction that flex is not about getting to the best game of the day, but it is about making sure that the games that are in our biggest windows remain relevant and have not fallen apart due to injury or unexpected circumstances. We look at our crystal ball in May, try to make the best predictions. We've added to that toolkit with Monday Night Flex and Thursday Night Flex. We did a Monday night 2 years ago. We did a Thursday Night Flex last year. We're very mindful that these are impactful moves, and we know that, we're not going to do it lightly. It's not about chasing the best game, but when the opportunity is there, and, like Mike said earlier, teams that have played their way onto prime time is a phrase we like to use. If you have those opportunities and the game that you've scheduled has fallen apart, we'll make that mindful decision. We get out well ahead of it and, try to make sure that clubs are not surprised by that. We're always looking 3, 4, 5 weeks ahead and what might be in play. And so, I think to your question of how does that, kind of impact us going into this process and the schedule we put out, we always look at the games toward down the stretch and make sure, how do we feel about them, trying to think that you cannot have the perfect crystal ball, but you really look at, these are teams that, are they likely to be playoff relevant? We want to think that all 32 of our teams have a chance to be playoff relevant. And if the games we put in there aren't quite to what we might have expected, we have that opportunity to flex.
Go to NFL Network's Mike Garafolo.
Hey guys, Ani, Mike, I know you got a million factors at play when you're making the schedule, but and you sort of touched on this with Mike Reese's question, the rest factor, how much of a factor is that when you're looking at teams? I mean, I know the 49ers fan base and media immediately looked last night to see how many teams they were playing coming off a bye because they had a bunch of that the last couple of years. Will that kill a schedule for you when you look at it and just say, what's the breaking point when you're factoring all that in?
I'm not sure we'd kill it, but I think it has to be a factor. Any schedule gets evaluated for all 32 teams, all the network partners, all the stadium operators, where'd the bye week fall, international travel, 3-game road trips. It all goes in the soup. Is rest disparity a factor? It is, but, you referenced the 49ers. Last year they had 3 or 4 games against teams coming off their bye, a total rest disparity number of something like -22. Was that the reason that they had a disappointing season? The year before, I think their rest disparity total number was even higher, and they went to the Super Bowl. So we haven't found yet that rest disparity in and of itself is a competitive inequity moving, win expectation or expected points scored or anything like that. So, if we're fortunate enough to have 8 or 10 or 15 really good, high-quality schedules sitting in front of Hans before he has to decide which 1 or 2 to bring to the commissioner, yeah, we'll make sure he's aware that this one's got a big rest disparity number for this team or that team, and certainly hopeful that we found a schedule this year that wasn't a significant negative total rest disparity for the 49ers. We happened to. But I wouldn't say that if we thought the very best schedule overall had the 49ers at -8 or -10 or -12 that we couldn't have played it. It would have been a factor, but maybe not a disqualifying one.
Okay, let's go back to Brazil with Adriano.
Hi, guys. I have a question for Jeff and a question for Hans. For Hans, I wanted to ask what went into selecting the Los Angeles Chargers as the home team and the Kansas City Chiefs, divisional rival, to come play an international game here in Brazil. And to Jeff, I have a specific question about the resolution that is going to be discussed about the participation of the players in the Olympics in flag football. That there's an item saying that the proposal is to limit NFL player participation to no more than 1 NFL player from the roster of each NFL club for each team participating in the 2028 Olympics. Now, does that mean each NFL franchise is only letting 1 player per franchise play in the Olympics, or every roster, every national team can have 1 player per franchise, but an NFL franchise might be able to have, say, 4 players playing in the Olympics for different countries? Thank you so much.
I'll do mine first, if that's okay with the group, real quick. That means that an NFL club could not lose from their roster. Let me rephrase. an NFL, a player, no more than one player per NFL club can play on one roster. So a team could have a player play for the United States, and that same team could have a player play for Brazil, should Brazil be in the Olympics, as well as one player play for a third team. So that's what that means. So you could have multiple players from one NFL team playing in the Olympics, but no more than one per nation represented in the games.
Thanks, Adriano. I'll jump in quickly. And Mike and Ani, you should jump in as well here, working closely with the international team. But to start with your question, the way it works for us is when we expanded our season several years ago to go to 17 regular season games, every other year, one of the conferences gets that extra home regular season game. So this year, it was a year where the AFC teams had the 9th home game. And so in those years, that's when a team is eligible to give up one of their home games and play that game internationally. For us as an opponent, certainly when we have the opportunity and with, a team that has been in one of the most successful stretches over the recent years in the Chiefs, to be the opponent against a Chargers team that was excited to go and play in Brazil, we thought that was a great opportunity really for a global audience to get that Chiefs-Chargers matchup. But Mike and Ani, you should jump in. You work with the international team closely on any other background about how the Chargers were the team this year in Brazil.
Yeah, the resolution that was voted on by ownership affords the NFL international group the opportunity to kind of rotate through the entire league. So everybody's going to give up at least one home game. I think it's every 4 years. So if an AFC team, since they had the extra home game this season, had not been part of the most recent rotation and given up a home game to be deployed internationally, then they knew that they were going to be in the mix for this season. So Ani and I work closely with Matt Shapiro and Peter O'Reilly from the events team and the international group and try to make sure clubs are aware, clubs are prepared. And if there's teams with, whether it's international marketing rights or good sized fan bases in some of these international markets, some of them make sense as far as we'd like to play in Germany, we'd like to play in the UK, we'd like to play in Brazil. And then as far as determining the visiting team goes, working with the home team, then once they know they've been designated, it is interesting and not unprecedented, but rare that we take a division game for international. But, you can make an argument that it is fan friendly relative to, say, the Chargers fan base. They get a Chiefs home game every year. So if they happen to miss this year because that game went international, well, they could have caught the Chiefs last year. They will be able to catch the Chiefs next year, most likely, as opposed to somebody like a Washington or a Minnesota that might only visit the Chargers once every 8 years. Taking that game away for international deployment may be a little bit less fan friendly. So always conscious about stuff like that. I think this might be 2 cycles in a row that the Vikings are playing the Browns internationally instead of in Cleveland. So always aware, always conscious, but never a decision made in a vacuum, always working closely with the international group and with our clubs.
Okay, let's go to Ben Volen, Boston Globe.
Hey guys, thanks for doing this today. My question's about something that I found over the years to be competitively, not ideal, maybe not the most fair thing, is division games in week 1 and maybe even week 2. Why schedule division games so early in the season when we see the play can often be sloppy coming out of training camp? A bunch of teams aren't ready. There are some really ugly games. And division games are the most important games on the schedule for all the playoff tiebreakers. Why does the NFL need to schedule division games in week 1? Why not push it back a couple weeks before you go into division play?
Happy to jump in here, unless you want to take a shot, Ani. I don't think there's any hesitancy on our part to play division games in week 1. I hear you on this, supposed non-conference schedule like they do in college basketball, but that's not a thing that we think about. We talked about Howard Katz and his 20-year legacy and his contributions to the NFL scheduling process. Among his many legacies, one of them is probably a strong preference for division games late in the season. To your point, they are key for playoff tiebreakers, and they matter no matter what the team's records are. And if a team is, in a clinch position or an elimination position, playing a team, even if they are already eliminated, the division opponents always show up. So definitely a focus on more division games late in the season, but certainly no commitment to not play division games early in the season. I don't know that it would feel right to play, 0 division games in an early season week of the NFL schedule. I don't know, Hans or Ani, if you have any further thoughts on that.
No, and I think what I've certainly learned is maybe the newest on this end to the schedule process overall. There's so many other factors we need to solve for that I think are really core, to layer this on. I think we just don't see when you play a divisional necessarily as the competitive inequity. You're going to play your 17 opponents. There's a lot of variables that go into when and where. And when we're trying to solve for, a number of factors and in and around when buildings are available and otherwise, I don't think we look at that as a factor. I think, we look at, there's some other things that we do look at and ultimately want to give the schedule and the software the flexibility to get to the best overall schedule we can get to. But as I mentioned on the onset, there's a human touch to it. And as we look at schedules as they get spit out, we'll see something like the Week 2 Super Bowl rematch with Philadelphia and Kansas City. We really like that coming off the heels of last year's game in New Orleans, getting that as one of the bigger windows early in the year where there's still a lot of excitement around the rematch of Super Bowl. Something like that we may look at and like that schedule more because it has that. But as Mike said, we don't really look at divisionals and divisional earlies as any competitive inequity.
Go to Jacksonville, Demetrius Harvey.
Hey guys, I appreciate you doing this. I'm curious, and I'm not sure who this question should be addressed to specifically, but I'm curious how much of an impact, if any at all, did Travis Hunter have on crafting Jacksonville's schedule? Obviously, they had one Monday Night Football game, but curious if he played a role in the process. And sort of as a follow-up, what went into the scheduling of the Monday Night Football for Kansas City versus Jax?
Ani, why don't you take that one?
Yeah, I'll jump in. It's a good and appropriate question. I think, we kind of saw a mix of games coming up across the primetime schedule. We started to see that Kansas City-Jacksonville game land very frequently in Monday Night Football. We saw it landing fairly early in the season, and we really like that. Not that long ago, the schedule came out before the draft, and before the draft, we would not necessarily have anticipated that Travis Hunter would have been on the Jaguars. So that is a benefit of the shift of this timeline and the schedule now coming out really in 3 weeks after the draft. And post-draft, we were seeing that game there, and we really like the idea of a few games under his belt and getting a primetime appearance against the Chiefs. And so there absolutely was a role in terms of something that we were seeing in the overall jigsaw puzzle and liked where it was landing and felt good about it. It was not necessarily a determinative or driving factor, but as we look at the overall schedule, it is a game we point to and feel like that's a great showcase opportunity, both for Travis himself and the Jaguars.
Okay, let's try to go rapid fire. We'll go to Detroit, then Denver. Dave Burkett.
Hey guys, always appreciate the conference call. Two really quick things. Hans, you can probably address this one first. Just I think I heard you say 10 million more viewers by pushing that Thanksgiving game start time back. Is that the driving force for that? And then probably for Mike, I don't know if I've seen a schedule like the Lions, at least not for them, where every road game is 4:25 or prime time. Beyond the winning, what's made them such a draw, I guess, of the networks of late, and any of those really great games that really involved a big fight for the networks.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. I'll start and then hand it over to Ani and Mike. They did, and as I mentioned, I think from 2:30 on, that Chicago Lions game was above 40 million viewers. I think the game averaged a little bit over 37 million viewers for the entirety of it. And so when we saw the numbers and broke it down by quarter hour, at 12:30, I think it was in the mid 20s. It maybe climbed to the higher 20s by 12:45. we just saw, hey, it was at a much higher level from 1 o'clock on. And that sort of means, again, we look at the data where we can to be informed. Told us there's a lot more fans that are home, that are back from wherever they are Thanksgiving morning to be on their couches, being able to watch. So that felt like a really obvious thing from the media perspective, but we also wanted to be really respectful of the Lions and tradition and Thanksgiving. So it was a conversation with them. And when we asked them, we found out that, yes, there's a parade in Detroit, and a lot of times their fans are juggling getting to that and doing their morning traditions with getting over to the stadium for a 12:30 start. So I think they fully embraced moving that kick back to 1 o'clock as well. Works better locally, definitely works better from a fans watching around the rest of the country. So we love that as a win-win situation that's hopefully better for football fans everywhere. Mike, Ani, on the Broncos?
Mike Kliss question?
I'm sorry, on the Lions?
Go to Mike Kliss, Denver.
Yes, guys. I got on a little late, so I apologize if this has already been asked. Two-part question. One, Broncos are the first team west of the Mississippi to have a no-bye after London. I wondered if that was a function of there are just so many international games now that you can't really promise that anymore. And two, Bo Nix, I think at this time last year, the Broncos had one primetime game, which is a Thursday nighter, and this year there's four. Is that an indication you believe Bo Nix is ready for prime time?
Well, Sean Payton definitely believes Bo Nix is ready for prime time. We've heard that a lot from our partners, how bullish he is on the roster. I think to your first question, you hit it on the head, right? As the world gets more complicated with more and more international games and all the other obligations across the schedule, that bye after an international game is not a guarantee. It is something that is certainly in play, but we find ways to kind of everything that we've learned. We talked about the Vikings playing the two games over in Europe. The learnings over time of 15 plus years of playing in Europe, the bye is less of a crucial and must-have situation. There are teams who often ask us not to have their bye, so we really let the solve go either way. There's not a guarantee of a bye, nor is there a guarantee of a no bye. It happened to work out in this situation. Important for us is that they got home. They're actually home for a couple of games after that trip, so it's a factor and a consideration. But you hit it on the head on why that is. And I think to the primetime piece, that team, they were a playoff team last year. It's a competitive division. There's great matchups, and it shows kind of that evolution in that process. The Broncos, Washington, teams that really performed well last year, and the commensurate escalation of national TV this year.
And same thing with the Lions to the previous question, right? It's not just about do we think they're going to be better. We don't know. None of us know, but our broadcast partners do. And so when we meet with all the broadcast partners at the beginning of this process and they make their list of, hey, here's some of the games and some of the teams that we'd most be interested in. Obviously, you've got your healthy dose of Dallas and Kansas City on there, but a definite representation, Lions, Washington, Denver, teams that have played their way into bigger national television windows. And so that's why you do find more of those teams being more represented, not just because we think they're going to be better, but because our broadcast partners are eager to showcase them in big windows.
Okay, we're coming up on a hard stop, but let's take a couple more. Ben Fish.
Hey, am I off mute?
Go ahead, caller.
Okay, sorry about that. Hey, thanks for doing this, guys. I think this is probably for Hans. I'm following up on Florio's question about the disparity in primetime or national game assignments, with several teams having none, and the Chiefs and the Cowboys and the Commanders really having a even higher number. Look, we all understand that some teams draw bigger TV audiences than others, and that's just business. But to what extent does kind of the old, decades-old philosophy of the NFL that, we are only as strong as our weakest franchise, and that we are a league of 32 teams, not just a few main ones who happen to play others, is that still a governing philosophy on these sorts of decisions, or are we into a new era?
No, absolutely. And look, I think we said it earlier, look, there's a lot more windows today. So, there's a lot of opportunities for teams to get exposure, but teams play their way on. I think that's the driving factor. And, you look at it, the Commanders had 2 guaranteed national windows last year. They ended up in a third when we flexed them in Atlanta. I think in late in the year, they're in 10 this year, and they played their way on. They've earned it. You've seen that with Detroit. You've seen it with Cincinnati. You've seen it with Denver, as we've talked about. And then we have the opportunity within the year to get teams into more exposure when they've earned it. So, that's what we're really focused on. And I think that's accrued to our benefit. The highest viewed divisional game ever was Kansas City and Buffalo a couple years, 50 million viewers. For two teams that are incredible teams and national brands now, but in two of the smaller media markets. So I think our model, when we look at how much we're focused on reach and making our games generally available, we feel very good about, layering the entirety of it on. And Mike Signoret could tell you all the facts about the teams that have gone worst to first, the 4 new teams in playoffs. The system itself has so much competitive equity in it that we think our media model is an element of it, but one that we're able to be very nimble and flexible within a year or year to year to get teams that have played their way on to serve our fans into national exposure. Nothing's changed. We're continuing going to be very, very deliberate with how we look at across the 32, but also react to the teams that have played and earned it and earned those additional exposures.
Okay, let's go to Tashawn.
Hey, I had a question for Jeff related to the flag football proposal. I know there's a section that says that there's going to be certain requirements in terms of, the field and things for each team to have an NFL player. Could you provide more insight into what some of those requirements may be?
Yeah, thanks, Tashawn. There we go. I don't know what's with the video today. Well, that's all to be discussed. Around the fields, around certain minimum standards for medical staff and such. Obviously, it's foremost in everybody's mind for NFL players to participate that we want the best possible health and safety standards, just like we do in a game. So we want to talk to the Players Association about the fields. We want to talk to the governing body and others who may be in the business of regulating that to make sure that we get that right for our player population, as well as for all players who are there from across the globe. So those are just sort of the basic things that we want to get done. And it's obviously worth mentioning them in this resolution because those are some of the work streams that are going to come from this after the discussion and the potential vote next week in Minneapolis.
Let's go to Buffalo with Ryan.
Hey guys, Ryan O'Halloran from the Buffalo News. Question for Mike. What were the discussions like about placing the Bills in the 4-4-25 windows late in the season as opposed to a holiday game or a standalone Monday night game?
The 4:25 Sunday afternoon window, let's all not forget, is still the most watched NFL television window. That's still where the average viewership is north of 25 million. So to think that being Sunday at 4:25 is somehow demotion from primetime just simply isn't true. So we in the scheduling room look at the 4:25 windows the same way we look at the primetime windows. Maybe they won't all be available in 100% of the country, although the Kansas City Buffalo game certainly will be on CBS in week 10 or wherever that fell, 9. But no hesitation at all about 4:25 versus primetime. Relative to the Monday night standalone window, again, like Hans said before, we're still evaluating, we're still innovating, we're still discussing what these Monday night side-by-sides or double headers really should be. But for the fans that want to watch the Bills on Monday Night Football, they'll have every opportunity to in week 6, and they can catch Chicago, Washington on a second screen or tape it and watch it later. But absolutely no reluctance or hesitation to play them in a 4:25 window down the stretch. That's where the playoff positioning is going to be decided, and hopefully those games matter and do really well for our broadcast partners and our fans.
Go to D. Orlando Ledbetter.
D.O.
Yes, three quick things. What was attractive about the Falcons getting five primetime games, and also international? I guess it just happenstance that they've had 3 in the last 5 cycles. And then Monday night side by sides or any of their Monday night side by sides. I didn't get to check that coming into this today.
Ani, why don't you jump in here?
Yep, I can answer the last one. The Monday night we just referenced about the Buffalo in Week 6 is in the side by side window. The later one against the Rams is not. The international piece, I think, we've talked on this call about the complexity and more games. I think one factor is Atlanta is one of the, global marketing teams in Germany. So that played into that, but also just as part of the opponents of Indianapolis and making sure we've got, kind of a competitive, attractive game there to bring to Berlin for the first time. And then the last question was just I think it was 5 primetime games. We have a lot of games to populate. They are a team that was competitive right to the end of the season in the mix for the playoffs. And the mix of opponents that they have this year, a lot of opportunities to showcase them in those games across our primetime packages. We're really interested in that late in the season Atlanta Tampa Bay game. Feels like a game that could have some real impact on Thursday Night Football for the NFC South.
Yeah, I think we got all three. Let's finish up with AP's Josh Dubow.
For Hans, has there been talk with the college football playoff about the scheduling of that Saturday, and how important is it, with those college football games that day to have, the strong games that you guys put in those windows?
Thanks, Josh. Look, as I said at the beginning, those are days, that day in particular, that third Saturday in December, we played 37 of the last 40 years. So that's an NFL day, and we think our fans love having football on that day. We love having football late in the year. There's a lot of stories to tell at that point as we're running into the playoffs and that chase to the playoffs. So, that's what we're focused on. You'd have to ask the CFP how they're thinking about the future. I would say we have a great relationship with college football. There's a lot we work together on. They obviously play a number of their games in our buildings, which we work with them on and otherwise. So we love and are big fans of the entire sport of football. I personally, obviously, am a big college football fan. But, they would need to speak about what their future is and how they're thinking about their playoffs going forward. We're focused on sort of continuing to bring great NFL games in our windows to NFL fans in the places and times they expect us to. And that's what we're going to continue to do going forward. And we'll continue to work with college football where we can. And we have a great history of doing so.
Okay, that's a good place to stop. Appreciate everyone joining us for this past hour, which was quite enjoyable. Jeff, Hans, Mike, and Ani. Thanks to everyone. Bye now.
So that's it. So that's it, folks. That was the NFL meeting, and I hope you enjoyed it. A lot going on there. I had a lot more people that were asking questions, including me, and I was getting a lot of answers. I think for Browns fans, something that is very important to know, that flex scheduling, as you heard it, right? Because Jordan Schultz put this out on Twitter. He said, I think I speak for most NFL fans when I say I'm genuinely excited about the Titans quarterback and overall #1 pick Cam Ward. Leaving him off the entire primetime schedule feels like a missed opportunity to showcase a potential star. Got to give Tennessee at least one. I didn't get a chance to delve into that. Someone else, I think Jeff Duncan, asked about flex scheduling, but didn't really drill down into how flex scheduling could impact the ability of a team like the Titans to be seen, or the Browns. And yet, that's exactly what would happen if the Titans catch fire. And let's say they go on an 8-game win streak to start out the year, or even a 6-game win streak, or maybe they win 75% of their games down the stretch. You're definitely going to see them impacted positively by a flex attempt to get them into prime time. So then that's the beauty of flex scheduling. that if you have a team that gets really hot and no one expected that team to do that, then they get seen and they will be seen. And so that's certainly true. I'm going to make a video of that too, because I'm actually, I thought that would be, because a lot of people are complaining, well, it's unfair treatment. There's no prime time. They're not on prime time and everything else. And, you know, they're upset, shall we say. And so, but the truth is that, well, you know, I can see their issue. All right. I can really see their issue, and why they would be upset. And I'm not saying it's not justified. It is justified. Yeah, as I was talking back and forth with a friend from the NFL, and well, actually Brian McCarthy, and so he was saying that there's never a year, there's never a year that all teams are happy. There's always a year where there's some teams that are that are, how do we say, you know, concerned about their treatment, right? And that's certainly the case this time. All right, that's certainly the case this time. So, so what I'm doing right now is I'm actually trying to rotate the device, or change the stream's orientation. Hold on a second. Let me go back here and fix that. Hold on a second. Change that to that the orientation is here. Stream horizontally. All right, that's what I want to do. Now go live. Okay. 3, 2, 1. All right. So I'm doing this. Okay. Hey everybody, I'm live here and I'm also live here as well, and I'm talking to you viewers about the question in this instance regarding the idea that, as Jordan Schultz put on Twitter, and Schultz is a Fox Sports NFL reporter, that Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders, he didn't make this claim, but others have, and Shedeur Sanders are missing or being missed by the NFL fans in prime time, and they are great young talents that won't be able to, you know, shine their light in the sun in prime time, right? But as I was saying earlier to viewers, and you saw it on the other live stream, you know what? Because I've got 2 live streams going, right? Is basically that, look, if the Titans, Browns are both catch fire, all right? If they both catch fire, then then you're going to see, oh boy. Oh, gotta straighten that out. Okay. Then you're going to see on prime time. You're going to see them on prime time. All right. So folks, I've got to straighten that out. That's an issue. That's an alarm. All right. So I'm going to have to stop this show and deal with that. And subscribe to Zenny62 on YouTube and bookmark the NFL News by